this to make it 28-3. Arthur Blank loving it, up by 25. Toss to White. He's in! What a comeback!
All right, welcome back to the 28-3 podcast. We're coming at you immediately post-game of the Saints win to go 2-0, taking down the Carolina Panthers 20-17 on the road in Charlotte on Monday Night Football. So we're going to get into this game review here. We're going to go through our predictions that we had last week, and then we're going to kind of get into the game in general, what we liked, what we didn't like, some takeaways. So first, let's review what we thought about what we had for predictions last week. Okay, we all predicted a win, so we got that one down.
3-0 there.
Yep. Nick and I were 100% spot on one thing: the Carolina Panthers score. I had 20-17 Saints win. Nick had 27-17 Saints win. Max, you had 24-12, which actually, man, about but 2 minutes left in the game, we thought that was probably
2 minutes left in the game.
I'm closer to what it was going to be.
Price is Right rules. I'm there.
Yeah. So then we go through it. We tried to do a game MVP. We each picked defensive guys. Let's see. Max, you went with Alante Taylor as your MVP. I went with
really well.
P. Warner. Nick, you went with DeMario. So let's start there. Who do we think was the MVP of the game?
Well, let's say this. Who got closest out of those three predictions? Honestly, it's close. Warner, not close, but it's either Alante or DeMario. It's pretty damn close to MVP. If it's the first half and Alante makes that interception, he would have my vote for the overall game MVP. As it stands, DeMario's got a really good case for it, but Granderson had the more clutch plays in crunch time. I would say Granderson edges
One
out.
play, don't say plays.
Edges him out, in my opinion.
He had the big, huge play, the sack fumble, for sure the biggest play from the defense all game. Alante had the opportunity to make that pick. You get it knocked out by Thielen. Granderson had one other tackle. DeMario 7 tackles with the sack and a tackle for loss. Marcus May, other than getting juked out of his pants by Bryce Young, 7 tackles, and he had a sack as well.
But wait, was he third on the team in tackles?
He was first this week, tied with P. Werner, who played well. Max, I think, downgraded Werner a little bit too much. He played a great first half, and he was flying around.
Yeah, I thought my MVP,
the whole defense was incredible.
I thought my MVP pick was looking pretty good for Warner in the first half. I mean, he was everywhere on the field, like to the point of, it's fun. We'll make a point of this, but like you had Fowler and Riddick in the booth tonight on the national broadcast because you had, for some reason, ESPN thought it'd be better to have the whole world fixated on Browns Pittsburgh for the the main primetime broadcast. But I like watching with Fowler, or you watch Herb Street on Amazon because they know the college guys so well. And Fowler made it a point of Warner saying, like, coming out of Ohio State, not really thought to be that big of a prospect, but the Saints really developed him. He was talking all about Warner in the first half.
I mean, he was a second-round pick, so that was a little overblown. But agreed, he's both of y'all know my opinion on him. It's probably higher than anyone else's. But he played he was really coming up, hitting the running backs constantly in the first half when they were trying to check down the Sanders. Played a great first half. Alante, to Max's credit, first half was all over the place. Second half, not as big a presence. DeMario all game. Lattimore, I don't think he gave up a catch. Maybe he gave up one in the first drive. Outstanding. This defense is just different when Lattimore's in there playing like himself.
Agreed.
This was a dominant performance. The 8 points at the end of the game, take it for whatever you want. They gave up 9 points through 58 minutes and were dominant. This was absolute dominance by the defense. Period.
Yeah. I mean, until the last 2 minutes.
Yeah, right, but still dominance overall.
Overall, yeah. I mean, but gosh, man. So, well, before we get into that, I mean, yeah, I think it was hard. We said it was going to be hard before the game to pick who the MVP was going to be, and I think it's even harder after the game because this was one of those, Dennis, in my opinion, like Dennis Allen team defense wins where, it wasn't one guy completely taking over the game. You had I think Alante is one of those guys who maybe showed up end to end better. I mean, look, in reality, the guy who showed up end to end the best in the game is the guy you didn't hear his name called the whole lot because he was just doing his job, and that was Marshawn Lattimore. Because I mean, you couldn't throw to him if you tried. Especially, I mean, Bryce Young.
He still came up in pop.
Bryce Young had a hard time hitting air tonight, but I mean, even if he wanted to target whoever Marshawn was guarding, that shit wasn't working.
And I feel like, we talked about it last week where if you're watching the game and you're neutral, you just see that the Saints looked better than who they were playing, even though the score, once again, doesn't end up that way. We looked like the better team the whole game. Again, it just little things that the offensive line was equally as bad in the first half as it was last week. We didn't clean up anything. So do we have to fix that? 100%. But this was pretty dominant from just watching a game if you were a neutral person. We had 100 more total yards. We had 60 more passing yards. We had 35 more rushing yards, 23 first downs to 14. Third down, we were 7 for 16, which if you watch that game, you would never believe we were almost 50% on third down. It didn't look like that, but we were.
Yeah. I remember there was a point during the game where they flashed that stat, and we were all feeling kind of like, this is that point in the game where I don't think we had scored the first touchdown yet. Just feeling like Max was having a heart attack or kidney stone. I couldn't tell what it was every time Tony Jones touched the ball.
God.
We're laughing because it's like every time they hand off to Tony Jones, Max is like, oh God. And it's like, dude, there's no one else to hand it to.
To be fair, that's a bad situation for us if we're being fair. Tony Jones should not be our primary.
Hey, look, here's the deal. We saw it in the fourth quarter. Taysom Hill, they put him in the backfield. They gave him the long handoff, where he could build up some speed and hit the hole, and he produced. Nick said it best. He's like, dude, that last play when he was running out the clock and he slid, if he pushes it, there's a good chance he breaks that tackle and has 100 yards rushing for the game.
Yeah.
Taysom was a fucking animal
in the fourth quarter. He's due to pop one when he comes in. I guess the challenge with Taysom is that, because he's not a full-time running back, and when you do put him in there, the defense is just keying in on him so heavily that...
Yeah, but it doesn't matter when they key in on him.
I think a big Saints fan narrative is we need more Taysom. Taysom can't run the ball 25 times a game. Right. We have to accept that.
10 times.
I love the 10 times. I love doing it in the second half.
Yes.
After we controlled the clock the whole first half.
Agreed.
As bad as we were on offense, we controlled the clock. We wore down the defense. We put Taysom in, and he just started hammering people.
And look at the final rushing stats. They're respectable, and in large part due to what Taysom did in the fourth quarter.
Absolutely. So, I like that approach. I thought it got – we've never seen him out of the backfield as a running back. Even with Peyton, we never saw that. He was in every other role imaginable. As a straight-up running back, we did not see that.
Where he was actually taking a handoff, not a wildcat situation.
Dude, it was great.
It was awesome. To do that, to realize, okay, Jamal's out. I still haven't seen anything on how bad the injury is. Hopefully it's not bad. But to pivot and put him in and take some of those snaps from Tony Jones, that changed the fourth quarter for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, it at least changes things up on the defense because – I say that, okay, you put Taysom Hill in, they know that he's, there's an 80% chance they're going to run it with him out of the backfield. But then again, if Tony Jones is back there and it's a running situation, it's the same difference, and at least you've got more options. But like you said, you just can't run it as much with Taysom as you can even with a Tony Jones when you have to play a Tony Jones.
Right. You can't beat him to death. I think keeping him for the second half, this ball control, we were clearly trying to, possess, win the time of possession. We kept running the ball, getting no yardage in the first half, and we were pretty stagnant. It didn't look good, but we stuck with it. And then the second half, we put Taysom in, and all of a sudden stuff started to open up. We threw him 2 balls. I think he caught one. He lost yardage on that, if I remember. He threw a pass. He had 9 carries. That's like a perfect Taysom game to me.
Yeah, well distributed, perfect.
Yeah. All right. So...
Well, let's move on to the offense. What we called?
Offense, we called, let's see. We had, because when we were recording last week, we all picked defensive guys as the overall MVP. So we said,
but we ended up picking offensive players as well.
Let's pick offensive guys.
Max, I'm a missed touchdown away from being spot on.
You had Olave And with Olave, you gave some stat predictions of 8 receptions, 135 yards, and 1 touchdown.
So what did he finish with?
6 for 86, no touchdown.
Okay, so what happens if he catches that one in the end zone? We're looking right at.
You're almost spot on.
Almost spot on.
I had Juwan, so that was a miss.
And for my fantasy team, way off.
2 for 13 for Juwan. I had Mike Thomas, first half MVP for sure. He had 7 for 55, but he didn't get another catch in the second half.
You called 9 for 95, so you're close on the receptions. I mean, look.
Nick and I were both close on offense and defense, if we're being honest.
I think we all lose this. I think you've got to call Taysom the offensive MVP. In my opinion, that's what changed the game. That's where our 2 big drives came.
Well, the momentum changer was Olave.
The Olave's catch was the biggest play on offense.
Because,
for sure.
Great, look, good pass.
Corey nailed that. That was the momentum changer of the game.
Good pass from Carr, but Olave did everything to come down with that ball. We were giving him shit watching the game.
It was a perfect pass by Carr. He was interfered with, making him make
that's
a spectacular
fine, but the catch was insane.
It was.
Give credit where
but it was
due.
a perfect pass.
Right.
It just, if he wasn't interfered, he would have caught it in stride.
Because we're Saints fans. We see the perfect pass.
Why would
not
2
have
weeks in a row
DPI
we don't
called all the time.
but I'm going to call out the perfect catch because that was insane.
Right.
And there was interference, and last week he did not do it.
But
this week he did it.
Let's talk about this real quick. Why 2 weeks in a row does he get interfered with and not get the call? Those were both clear pass interference by the rules. Both of them.
NFL,
they raked across his arms before the ball got there. Both times he got his arms through the contact and got to the ball. One he caught, one he didn't. But those are both PIs. Why is he not getting the call? Is it because
tale as old as time? The NFL versus the Saints.
But no, let's forget that. Like, this is why is it not getting called?
Do you think it's something?
Is it the type of player he is?
That's what I want to say. Are you insinuating it's because of the way he plays?
No, man. Because if you look at his slight frame, you would think he would get these calls. It's like it's the players like Shaq in the NBA who never get the calls. The hack of Shaq, he never got the calls. So you would think if it's a big muscular guy like Michael Thomas, he's not going to get the call. You would think Olave, who's bouncing off of these people.
I don't know what it is, but it's not fair. Adebo gets called for a penalty that cost us a sack fumble.
That was horrible.
And that contact was no different than what happened to Olave, if not less.
Who was the guy guarding, was it Mingo going down the field, who clearly pushed off? I mean, he was wearing the bright blue armband, and you could see his arm extending, and they called DPI on us on somewhere in the third quarter. I can't remember
the only one who got any of those calls was Adebo, so it had to be Adebo.
Yeah.
I think he had 3 of them. One of them justified. The hold, if you want to really get into like the nitpicky part of the rules, it's a penalty. But how is Olave not given that call twice?
Yeah.
On a ball that is perfectly thrown, he's right there to catch the ball, is interfered with, and we get neither of those calls.
Yeah.
Now, luckily, this time he caught it on a miraculous catch. Unbelievable catch. Best offensive play of the game. No question about it.
Best offensive player of his career.
Yeah.
If we're being honest.
Easily.
But look, it's the NFL officiating. We know it's bad. It's a tale as old as time. It happens every week. It's par for the course. Whatever cliche you want to throw out there, it happens every fucking week.
Yeah. So I would say, some of us were closer than others on our predictions, but at least the main thing we predicted was wins, and we got the win.
Well, you know what? Let me throw this out there. So big shout out. We only had 3 penalties this week.
That's huge.
3 penalties, 32 yards. Adebo had 2 of them. But
no pre-snaps then.
But look, overall, 3 penalties, 32 yards, huge change from the preseason where we were awful.
It was concerning
with penalties. So
highly concerning.
Also, last week we talked about the wide receivers and how
everyone
heavy,
stepped up again.
Yeah, heavy the distribution was to our wide receivers, because that's where all 3 of us believe our advantage is at the skill positions. They had 17 catches for 200 plus yards again.
Yeah.
And they were approaching, they were over 250 last week, I believe. So it's clear that's where our offense is going through. This week we would have liked to see a little more efficiency. Shaheed's been the most efficient. He caught all 4 of his targets this week. Olave only 6 of 11. Not great, but Mike Thomas 7 of 9.
Olave had a rough first half, I think.
Yeah, he did, but his second half made up for it.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I mean, like that discrepancy between the receptions and targets.
I think Max hit it on the head. You'd like to see him score that touchdown.
He's
so fluid and so skilled. You'd like to see him keep that foot in bounds and score that touchdown. He had a chance to score a touchdown on a very tough catch in the first half. That's a really difficult play.
Yeah.
You can't really knock him, but he'd probably like to make that play every once in a while.
Yeah.
I think he could have. His first half wasn't great. His second half was spectacular.
And look, to Nick's point, Shaheed, 4 targets, 4 catches, 63 yards, 45-yarder, clutch.
He's looking more and more,
4 minutes
or
left
just
to go in the game.
Point blank is a quote wide receiver than people want to give him credit for.
You heard people. Who's disputing that right now?
No, I mean, there's people on Twitter, Saints media or national media.
He had 500 yards last year in limited playing time with no training camp.
But yet again, okay, because
I think people want him to be a star.
Week 1, he was on the practice squad last year, okay, and then became a receiver.
Well, no, he was basically coming off of IR because he came off a torn ACL.
Right, but I mean, he was a stash last year. But the thing is,
but let's not understate how much of a stash he was. This kid went through no mini camps. No training camp because he was coming off a torn ACL.
Right.
So literally he was just on the team due to what he did in college.
So all I'm saying is that people wanted to put him in that UDFA, never played wideout, he's signed as a return specialist box rather than giving him credit as a wide receiver. So I'm not.
But he played wide receiver in college,
Max,
though.
I'm not siding with those people. I'm agreeing with you.
Well, no, but I'm disagreeing that people said that because he played wide receiver to great effect in college. He had 800 yards last year.
We got to set a parameter here. Is he an elite NFL receiver? No, he's not.
No one's
he
saying
has
that.
a lot of work to do to become that. Is he an incredible problem for every team we face as a third receiver? Yeah, maybe the most dangerous third receiver in the league right now.
The bottom line with
he's scary.
The bottom line with Shaheed, and this is the place we're at, is that the people who are still thinking of him as a converted return specialist, to those people I say,
I don't think there's that many people out there, man.
Coming into the league, that's true. We wanted him as a return guy
but that was his ticket to the league. But the reality is, he played wide receiver for 4 years in college, and he was an effective wide receiver.
I understand. And last year in the second half of the season,
but
he
you also
proved
said he
he's
was
a
one of
receiver.
those D3 colleges, so to whatever effect an effective wide receiver is.
Yeah, but so was Marcus Colston
in a D3.
To
My
not
point is,
admit
he played wide receiver.
To not admit he's massively overachieved what his expectations were, that's not fair.
He absolutely has, but I don't think
overachieved.
anyone questioned. It's not like he was a converted running back to wide receiver. Like, this kid played wide receiver his whole fucking life.
But you know what? We're always finding that freak fast guy that we go undrafted or 7th round year after year. Some of them have worked really well. Tommy Lee Lewis did not.
But we're discounting what he did in college if we're saying this guy was he wasn't a project at receiver.
Well, he's just.
It's not like Jawan Johnson going from college wide receiver to NFL tight end. Like, this was college wide receiver going to NFL wide receiver.
Yeah, but that's a big jump. That's a big jump
huge
from where he came
jump,
from.
but at the same point, he has all the tools in the toolbox.
The point is, when he got on the team, people thought return specialist, and that's the box they put him in. The ship has sailed on that. He is a wide receiver. He is our number 3 solid wide receiver. That is who he is. So, and I'm telling you, I'm not saying I agree with him, but there are people who just still don't see him for whatever reason as a true wideout. He's a true wideout now.
Look, that's fine, and we'll leave it at that. I don't agree with you that there's this big group of people who don't see him as that. Like, people
I feel like
love him.
We love him as Saints fans.
No, as Saints fans.
I think a lot of people around the league love him. I think maybe it's gone too far the other direction.
I would agree with that.
Where
it might be too far indeed.
Right.
Yeah.
This is not an elite guy yet. If he wants to be a 1 or a 2, he has work to do. In his role now, he is scary as hell.
Yeah.
Like any defensive coordinator
we're all
facing
saying the same
us,
thing, just in a different way.
Yeah.
But we're not, though. He's arguing, and I agree with him on this, that it's probably too far in the opposite direction where people are overstating what he's going to do or what he has already done. No one has questioned it since he set foot on a field last year.
Yeah, let me ask you this question. We all agree he's not an elite wide receiver. Is he an elite threat?
We don't have an elite wide receiver at this point.
I think we do. I think we have 2 of them.
No, elite. And when I say elite, I mean like top 5.
No, but let me get to the
top
question.
Top 5, no. We don't have a top 5 receiver. We have 2 top 15 type receivers.
Agree.
So my question is, and listen to the words here, is he an elite threat?
An elite threat, yes. He is an elite threat. Because he has a 50-yard rush to his name. He has multiple 40-plus yard touchdowns to his name.
When you can put that guy on a third corner,
he's an elite
it's
threat.
Trouble for anybody.
Yeah.
There is no third corner in the league who can deal with that. And then if he's taking the second corner, he can outrun any of them.
Yeah.
And then you've got MT or Olave in the slot working on a slot corner.
You can
Corey, to answer your question, he is absolutely an elite threat. And to back up what Nick said, we do have 2 top 10 to 12 wide receivers, but we do not have an elite wide receiver counting any of the three.
Yeah.
Looking at what Mike
and that's
did,
fine. There's nothing wrong.
Let's talk about what Mike did in the first half. Mike, nothing spectacular. Those catches were all very difficult catches. Yeah. He got hit every time. There just aren't many guys who catch 7 of those 9 targets.
Yeah. You know what? I'm going to say this, though. The 3 wide receivers as a whole, Michael Thomas, Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, in whatever order you want to put them in, and that's subjective, and we're not going to litigate that right now. But the 3 of them complement each other more. I guess it's the most perfect complementary group of anything I can think of, in the NFL right now currently. Because you got Michael Thomas, who's the big-bodied guy who's going to make all the physical, tough catches. You got Olave, who is a super crisp, perfectionist when it comes to route running.
Yeah.
He's probably not going to make the contested catch 40 yards on the field.
Complimentary is awesome.
And then you get Rashid Shaheed, who is running like a fucking scalded dog down the field and is going to burn just about anybody. You put the 3 of them together, you have a perfect wide receiver core.
Yeah.
And what I want to see, we talked about this. Max was very frustrated in the game with the offense, rightfully so. It didn't look great in the first half. We couldn't finish drives. We were, Carr
terrible.
throws the terrible pick again. He's got 1 in each game. That's the one thing. If that pick doesn't happen, I think Carr played great. The pressure was crazy again. The offensive line was terrible in my opinion overall.
Yeah.
He hung in there. If you take that one throw away, it's a great game. Instead, you're like, man, why did he do that 2 games in a row right before halftime, basically giving points. Defense saved us this week, but basically giving points to the other team. I just want to see Kamara, Jawan, Olave, Shaheed, Thomas on the field at the same time and dare someone to stop that.
I just want to see the gang.
Assuming we can block.
I just want to see the gang together.
Yeah. If we can block at all, that is a frightening skill grouping.
The biggest problem and the biggest question mark on the team is still the offensive line. And we touched on this in the preseason. In every preseason pod we had, this was the ultimate. This is the turning point. Whichever way it goes, is the offensive line.
Especially
if they underachieve, we're fucked.
And
if they excel, we're good to go.
Yeah, and in the second half,
they've been terrible.
Whatever adjustment we made, and I'll give the coaches credit, both second halves, we were a much better team both games. And we always talk about adjustments at halftime, all that. Whatever happened, both games we played far better on offense in the second half than we did in the first half. We need to do that for a whole game when we go against.
And the thing is, we can't sit here and just bag on Penning because this was not Penning this game. We watched in back-to-back plays. There was that one series, or I think it was Hurst and Penning both gave up the big rush on the left side, and then we watched Ruiz give up a big rush on the right side.
Yeah, Ruiz got blown up one-on-one, but I saw something in this game that seems to be, kind of a trend. Or, I don't know if you say it's a real trend after 2 games, but it was like the Panthers, they did a good job of watching the film against the Titans because there were a few plays where people said, okay, we said it was Penning against the Titans, but if you look more closely at this play, the Titans actually schemed us up really well, ran a really well-timed stunt that had Hurst kind of shade more to the inside. Penning thought he was supposed to shade on Hurst's shoulder, and then boom, someone comes around the outside. It was a stunt play where one defensive line goes towards the center, the other one wraps around on the outside.
And they ran that all night tonight, too.
And they ran that all night tonight, especially in the first half. And so that tells me that, okay, we have shown bad tape to other teams. And it's like the worst thing you can do. Sometimes when you see teams come out of nowhere and they're blitzkrieging the whole league at like 10-0, and you're just like, this team is coming out of nowhere, and then one team figures out how to stop them. That team has given bad tape to the rest of the league. And it's like we did that in week 1 with our offensive line. Not to say that we had a whole better option, but the stunts the Titans ran, we would go up against a great defensive front, a creative defensive front in week 1, and they stunted us to death, and it worked. The Panthers did the same thing tonight, at least in the first half.
And this is a good defensive front.
So that's what I was about to say. This is not like this was a bad defense. Right. This team is loaded with young talent. Like Brian Burns is fucking fantastic.
Yeah, you got to have athletic.
Derek Brown is a good defensive tackle.
Right, because you can't run those stunts. If
Justin Houston is probably a Hall of Famer.
Justin Houston,
if you don't have the athletic
Shaq Thompson before he goes out with the injury.
And let's look. So we want to talk about Penning. Houston had the one sack. They gave him only credit for half. They gave
Penning was better this week.
He was much better.
Yeah.
Houston only had 2 tackles the whole game. One of them being the sack. So he was better, and we did not help him every play. But the rest of the line kind of failed us a little bit. Yeah. That's what's concerning. Seeing Ruiz get beat again, like old school Ruiz, not last year Ruiz. They seem to be getting more done coming straight up in the pocket.
middle. Yeah.
So they, Houston would get really wide. You could see that. So would Burns. They would get really wide, force Carr to step up, but he'd step on straight into pressure because our interior line wasn't holding up today.
It was like there was a couple times Carr thought he could step up, but he really
couldn't. Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, he couldn't even plant his back foot to throw before he had to step up. There was no time.
Yeah.
And to back up your point, though, Penning was much better this week. And this is not to say he was good or great, but he was much better.
It was also against a much better
player. The rest of the
player.
offensive line was worse this week.
Yeah.
Ramczyk is the only one who I think through 2 weeks has been pretty much flawless, hasn't had any issues. No. But Ruiz tonight, McCoy last week had a couple of rough moments. Hurst tonight and last week. Penning had a couple. So everyone else has been bad at some point this year other than Ramczyk. Ramczyk's been fucking great.
They've got to figure something out because, Underhill put out something that we talked about where it's like, can you make a conclusion about one guy for week one? No. And that's talking about Penning. But with the whole, now I've transposed it to the whole offensive line in general where, Carr is what you need to make noise if we want to see the Saints team make noise in the playoffs. And we're risking it by letting him get hit as much as we're letting him get hit. It's a lot. It's not just like, oh, he's a tough guy back there. He can make the throws. No, we are putting our number one asset in severe jeopardy the way we're playing right now. It's also got to be figured out.
What you said about the stunts, where a lot of this is communication. It's not necessarily they're not capable. This is a line working together that's not working right now.
Well, that's what we said at the beginning of the year. We all were talking about the difference in talent or maybe lack thereof between the Super Bowl offensive line and this one. Sure, maybe talent 1 through 5 isn't that much different.
Are we sure Pete doesn't make this line better?
But
are we sure about that?
No, we're not sure. We can't be sure about anything on this offensive line.
Look, Nick and I had this conversation offline earlier. It's like, Andrews Pete, honestly, he's one of our 5 best offensive linemen, and he probably should be on the field at this point. We all bag on the contract, and rightfully so, but the reality is Andrews Pete is an animal in the run game and the screen game.
Yeah.
And
put it
honestly,
this way.
he should be playing right now.
Through 2 games, the way we've seen them play, the only thing we can be sure about on this offensive line is Ryan Ramczyk. Everything else, who the hell knows?
That's a good point. Ryan Ramczyk right now is the constant that we can all agree on.
You want to try Pete instead of Hurst? Go for it.
Yeah.
It's who the hell knows right now. But anyway, all right. So I think that pretty much covered what we didn't like component of.
We won, by the way.
Okay, let's just go all 3 of us through our big takeaways.
Yeah, let me start it off. I'll say one thing, like Taysom Hill, God, we've talked about this so much, and I think the only thing that has knocked him down, and I guess my perception of him as a Saints legend at this point, is the fact that they tried to force him down our throat as a quarterback. But if Taysom Hill had never, I guess, been in contention for a starting quarterback job on his team, he's probably one of my top 3 favorite Saints ever.
Yeah.
Because he's a fucking animal and he can do anything. When you see a guy who's blocked punch before, he's returned kicks, he's run the ball, he's caught the ball, he's thrown the ball.
Yeah.
Like Taysom Hill he's a fucking Saints legend. Yeah. And I just hate that they tried to shoehorn him in as a starting quarterback at, that one point in time.
That was
without
Peyton. That was Peyton.
It was, but
no
at the
one
same
else
point,
thought he was a quarterback.
But the thing is, without that, he's probably one of our favorite Saints ever.
Yeah.
Hey, Nick, so for anyone listening that paid attention to the Twitters last week, we've had Ross Tucker as a guest on this whole time, and now we're going to have Max chime in about Taysom Hill.
That was a very poor joke.
One of the best.
You want a second shot at that?
That's hilarious. It was very funny.
My thing, what I'd love to see.
But he said he was one of the greatest football players
of all time. He did say that.
Yeah, that's a bit much.
So my thing next week, what I'd love to see if Jamal's out? Let's start Taysom at running back. Let's get him 17 carries next week, and then we rest him in week 4 when Kamara comes back. Let's just roll him out there as starting running back.
Here's the only problem with that. Does that risk?
I don't care
for the season.
What risk?
For the season, if you give him more than he can handle.
What does it matter? They didn't fucking use him after week 4 last year.
One game.
No, do you risk injuring him for the season if you give him
my point is they didn't use him after week 4 last year. He had 200 plus yards and like 8 a carry, and they stopped using him.
So, but did we benefit from not?
I don't want to do this for 3 or 4 games. I want to do this one game.
Yeah.
Get us to game 4 when Kamara comes back. Let's go into Green Bay. Let's Taysom. You're our starting running back.
Yeah.
We're going to give Tony 10 carries, and you're going to get 15 carries, and we're going to just rock it out.
So you're saying you think he can handle his?
Absolutely.
For a game? Yes. For a season? No. We can't do that every game.
Okay.
Not every game. This game.
For one game. Okay. That's fair.
And here's my other takeaway. Carl Granderson,
Yeah, big boy.
Dude, he has been lights out.
He was incredible in the first half. Second half.
Look, the funniest thing is, like, I think we signed him for 2 years, a year ago? 2 years ago? So his contract is up at the end of the season.
Yeah.
The shot of signing him for a team-friendly deal, I hate to throw out that term, team-friendly deal, but
he's playing like this.
You got to pay for him at this point.
Yeah.
Like, he is on track to be the next Trey Henderson, meaning he is on track to go to another team.
Henderson? You just
and
Nick
put up
Shade that.
11 or 12 sacks. I mean,
no, you're right. You're right. I mean, it's funny because you've got the guy who
and it's a guy we got as an undrafted free agent
compared to a Peyton Turner, who is supposed to be the guy,
right?
Was supposed to be the guy getting paid.
Granderson's basically the guy Peyton Turner and Davenport were supposed to be.
Yeah.
Well, he's on track to be that this year, and we're about to lose him like we did Trey Henderson.
Well, it took him 4 years to.
Look,
I mean, he's an undrafted free agent.
No, that's great.
Look,
I know.
Year he's gone. He did the Henderson.
We drafted Peyton Turner and Davenport to be good right away. Granderson, this is what we were looking at: develop him, make him better, make him an impactful player. Great play. The best play on defense in the half.
Yeah.
He did kind of. I feel like Cam kind of took over on the defensive line in the second half with the pressures. Mario.
But he was a clear
that was
second.
a huge play.
Granderson's pressure was consistent. The swim move he had for the sack.
The strip part of that was the best.
Yeah.
For him to take that ball and not just accept getting that sack when he knew he got the ball.
There was a play where Granderson made the left tackle look like just air. I mean, just did a swim move like he was in his,
I guess what I'm saying is do not get used to seeing Granderson in the Saints uniform because I don't think we're going to be able to afford it.
Unless we change our philosophy about who we re-sign as free agents. But,
maybe not. He's what, 2 sacks on the season now? Because he only got credit
1.5.
1.5 on the season?
If he keeps up
I thought he had 1.5 last game, no?
If he keeps up this clip.
If he keeps this up, he's at 12 sacks. Yeah,
he's pacing for a lot.
But
anyway, I think my biggest takeaway was kind of what you said earlier, Nick. It's like we closed this game out. This was not what we saw last year. Last year, it was just we're holding our breath at the end of the games. I'm not going to lie. I mean, I was absolutely holding my breath when we went prevent defense and they scored a touchdown.
And don't
to
underestimate.
make it interesting. But look, it's like you said, we got the first down we needed to kneel on the ball at the end. We've done it 2 times in a row now. We're 2-0 as a result of it. We put ourselves in position to just close out a game. That's refreshing as hell.
100%. And we all acknowledge that wasn't a great game by Carr, but does Andy Dalton make that throw to Shaheed?
No.
It doesn't.
No.
The leadership part and the fearlessness part to throw that in that situation.
Both of them. The one last week and tonight.
Right. Yeah. That's the difference in why I always said, like, let's not blame the coaches yet. Let's get them players, is because this guy didn't have a great game. When the game was on the line, it was a dime. It was a perfect throw. Ended the game, essentially.
Yeah.
Now we see that drive out, we score, and that, we still had to finish the drive. But that's a top-level throw that not a lot of guys in the league make in that situation. 4 minutes left. You're in 4-minute offense. You're running out the clock. Drops back, 40-yard bomb to Shaheed.
Yeah.
Perfectly placed 2 weeks in a row.
I'll say this. You're still wrong about what Carmichael did last year, okay? but it's almost like
I understand you wanted us to go 3-13 with a bunch of double reverses in halfback pitch.
But despite your wrongheadedness, I will say this: last year when we were all just confused as hell at the end of the games, why we couldn't come back, why we couldn't hold on to leads, like what the hell were we doing? Why didn't we run this play? Why didn't we try to close out? It's because we couldn't. We didn't have the guys.
We didn't have the guys to do it.
We didn't have the guys to do it. I still think Carmichael could have called better plays, but we did not have the guys to do it.
Well,
I agree with you on that.
We can always say
read the article about Carmichael wanting to be more aggressive this year. I think it was Underhill.
We talked about that in one of the earlier
he wasn't
issues
aggressive enough last year, and this year he's.
But also that team, after giving away those games, was 7-10 with injuries everywhere.
Yeah,
that was not. No one wants to go 7-10. We can all acknowledge that. That defense was too good to go 7-10.
You don't like going 7-10?
The offense skill was terrible last year.
It was really bad.
But we don't need to rehash this conversation from the last 20 episodes.
I'm just saying the quarterback is the difference so far. That is the difference. And he hasn't been good yet. And that's what's awesome. He hasn't been good yet.
My takeaway is our ability and our doing it at the end of the game.
Nick, do you have any takeaways from this?
No, other than I think the offense is just a little off. I'm fully confident within a few games this thing's going to be humming. I think we're a big problem on offense. Yeah. Offensive line has to get better. There's no doubt.
They do.
But when you watch the way we're finishing these games, this is different. This is a good team that's just sputtering early in the games for some reason. I don't know why. We're not protecting him in the first half. If we can just protect him a little bit and we get Kamara back. We were talking about the 3rd and 2. We were past midfield in the third quarter, I believe, and they rushed 6. There's just no option to dump the ball off. If there's a running back in the flat there, it's a 15, 20-yard game. We just don't have a player that can do that right now. Yeah. In 2 weeks, we have that.
Yeah.
Kamara's in there. That's a dump off to Kamara, and good luck. Try and stop him from getting that.
Right.
So I think it's very, very close, and we can be negative about how they haven't been great, only scoring 36 points in 2 games. Not great. We all know that. But they moved the ball. They're averaging, 375, 380 yards in the 2 games. They're moving the ball. They're not finishing drives. I just think if the offense clicks and becomes a 23, 24-point scoring, the defense is obviously legit.
Yeah, this is one of those offensive coordinator nerd dreams where, you're running the ball into a brick wall for 1 yard, and then you do it again. And then maybe you get a first down, maybe you get a 3rd, 4th, and short. But you keep doing it, and then the rushes get a little bit longer, and next thing you know, you've thrown it as many times as you've passed. You've thrown as many times as you run it, and you end up winning the game in a hard-fought win, and it shakes out.
Yeah.
You know what, Joe? Let's finish it up with this, and this is one of our favorite followers on Twitter, Evan Sachs. A guy always hits home runs, and I love this tweet. It says, "Yeah, the Saints have kinks to work out on offense. But as someone too young to watch the Dome Patrol, I've waited my whole life for a Saints defense this good. We went up 13-6, and I thought to myself, that's game. What a feeling. I will enjoy every one of these ugly slugfest." And this has come full circle
well
to
said.
where,
Well said.
Nick and I, being the older members of this pod, growing up watching only defense in this city, in this team. And it's come full circle. Where now people who have grown up only watching offense under the Sean Payton era, who have thought to themselves man, the Dome Patrol, that sounds fucking awesome. And it's now they're getting to see what it was like to sit through a 13-6 game pretty much. And just kind of see how that
one
unfolds.
difference is the potential we have on offense that we did not have with the Dome Patrol.
Yeah.
This is a different team, I think, potentially.
But it's nice to know that you have that feeling when you're about to go up by 11 and you're thinking, we're about to go by 11. The other team has scored 9 points through 57 minutes.
Yeah, and there was a point where we scored
feeling.
The second to last touchdown, I think, and he looked over and he goes, "All right, that's game."
Yeah.
And it's fuck, he's probably right. That probably is game.
Yeah. So, but anyway, all right, great win. We're 2-0. Next week we go into Green Bay, Lambeau Field. Got to keep the ball rolling. Keep the train rolling.
Preview pod coming up in a few days.
Yeah, we're going to drop it whenever we feel like dropping it.
Soon enough.
All right, thanks again for listening to another episode of the 20 to 3 podcast. Who dat?
What a comeback!